Hey guys, it's Dan here with DirtyDanPB.com, and today we're going to look at the Planet Eclipse Gtek 180R. This is an in-depth maintenance video for this marker. We're going to go through three main portions of it. The first one's going to be the bolt. Second is going to be your ASA, and then your HPR. And then the third is actually going to be your solenoid and your solenoid spool. Some of the stuff you won't have to do very often, typically in the first year or so of playing if you're playing fairly consistently, but we're going to go through so you know what to do. First, we're going to start with all the tools that we have here. So I want to start with a pair of needle nose pliers. It's best if you actually have one that is flat on this part instead of these little grooves, just to be a little bit safer on the internal parts in here. Secondly is going to be a few tiny screwdrivers. You can use the one that's typically found in the Planet Eclipse spares kits that come in the markers. Third is going to be a pick for any O-rings that might be bad. This is just a main pick. It's nothing crazy. I think I picked it up at like Ace Hardware, something like that, for a couple bucks. And I'll use this to kind of point out different points on the marker here. You do want your Planet Eclipse or any other brand of Allen keys are fine, as long as it has all of these sizes right here. Again, I recommend the Planet Eclipse one since that will likely come into your marker unless you got it used and it didn't. You will want Eclipse grease. This is the grease that I recommend using for all Eclipse markers, in addition to, the factory. Then you're going to want a microfiber. This one, as you can see, is fairly dirty. It doesn't really matter if it's dirty or clean because you're just going to be wiping off old grease and grime onto that one. So to start, we're going to go ahead and disassemble the marker. For the bolt, you're just going to pull right up on this one. This one's a little stiff. Pull that right out. We're going to set that right there. We're going to take off the front grip to separate the frame. The front grip, the best thing to do, you can do it with the barrel on or off, but you're going to want to put your thumb right here and just pull on this part. The newer your marker is, the harder it actually is going to be able to take that off. Keep that in mind just because from factory, they're on there pretty tight, but over time they'll loosen up. You have two main set screws. You have one right here and one right there underneath the bolt. So you're going to grab our Allen for that, take that out, and carefully screw these off. It also doesn't hurt to have some sort of a tech mat and an open space to be able to put things so you don't lose them and they don't roll off and go into the void. But after you do this, you can actually take the front, or the top half of the marker body off and be done with it. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and check the eyes. We do this for every marker, and honestly, we do go a little more in depth, especially when you get used ones, but you can check your eyes. This one's a little dirty, so I'm just gonna take our microfiber, wipe all the grime off of that, make sure it looks clean. The reflector's nice in there. We'll check your ball detent. This one's definitely used. You can see some grime on that. You can wipe them off just to reuse them, or you can just replace them because they are legitimately a dime a dozen. You can see in there, right inside of this hole, there's a little bit of lint, probably from paint, and then just some dried up paint. So we'll take our microfiber, and what I like to do, especially if you're not doing like a crazy deep clean, is just pushing that in there, getting it all the way around, making sure, that looks clean. This little portion looks clean since that's where your emitter for your eyes is gonna go. We're gonna put that back in. I'm not gonna do the other side on video. I'll do that off screen, but you get the gist. It's just the same thing, just reversed. That's it for the body. You don't have to do anything crazy. For the lower frame here, we are going to take the grips off first, and then we'll dive into the ASA. You can dive into the ASA first. I just want to get the grips off sooner than later, just because we already took the front grip off. So this is two main screws right here. They're super basic to get out. Make sure you put them together so they don't get lost later on. Take these off. Just like that, and then your grip will come right just like that. So in here, you have all the fun guts of the marker, your board, your solenoid, your switch, all that fun stuff, and then all the wires going up through here. Those are those little IR lasers I was talking about earlier. We're gonna start with taking the ASA and the HPR out, and then we will get the solenoid out, and then we'll start teching it and throw it back together. So down here, for your ASA, you have two main screws holding it in. Just take one of the bigger Allens and spin those out. They shouldn't be crazy tight, but again, same thing. You just want to set them aside where they will not get lost or roll over, but this is the only type of screw in the entire marker that's that size. So you'll take that off, your ASA will come right off, and then you do have this little plunger and spring. This spring will fall right out just like that. This will roll away and you'll never find it again, so put that somewhere safe. For the plunger, typically you can get it with just your fingers. You can also use your needle nose pliers. Those are the only way that you're actually going to need the needle nose for this. I should be able to get it out with just my fingers, just like that, so you can do that, but in case you need them, you do have your needle nose right there for you. That is it for the inside of this, but as you can see, there's some grime and grease in there. We're actually gonna wipe that off with our microfiber just to make sure everything is clean for continue. As you can see, this one was definitely used. Be careful when you're putting this down, just because you do have those two IR sensors. If you put this on something flat, you're gonna bend those, so just be careful if you are putting this frame down and cleaning this section. But otherwise, you are good to go. Gonna go ahead and just make sure that's clean. It's fairly clean. There's a little bit of grease residue, but that will be fine. Now, for your solenoid, you're first gonna wanna unplug it. You can follow the wires right here, which is this yellow and this black wire, which you're gonna disconnect from the board. Just be soft so you don't destroy anything. And then you have this pin, this little brass pin right here. You have to push that all the way through, so you'll take a small Allen key, same thing that I used to take off the back grips, and just push that. Put this somewhere safe, just so you don't lose it. I'll put it over here with the little parts build up. That is gone, so now there's nothing that is holding this solenoid in, so you're gonna want to very carefully push that right up, and that'll come out just like that. Check to make sure that you didn't leave in the little filter down here. There is a gasket, which is this one, with a little brass filter down there. You're gonna want to take that out and inspect that. Everything else looks good. You can see some grease back here. So just like we did down at the bottom, we're gonna make sure that we clean this off, at least, good enough. It's not gonna affect performance or anything, but you are good. So these are 3 portions of the marker. We're gonna start with the bolt. We'll do all the bolt maintenance, and then we will do the ASA, and then your solenoid. So we'll go ahead and bring this in the middle, put these aside. Your bolt, there's a few different portions of this. For basic maintenance, you're just gonna wanna take off this yellow orangey can right here. Take that right off, leave all that, push the bolt through just like that. You're gonna have one main O-ring inside of this can right here. That is your most important O-ring for your bolt. Typically, if you're gonna have a leak down the barrel and you can put your finger in the breech and feel it, it's gonna be that O-ring. You're gonna wanna grease it up first and then replace it if the issue persists. But we're just going to wipe everything down, wipe off that old grease. It actually looked pretty darn good and not super dirty, so I'm fairly happy with that. We're gonna take our Eclipse grease and just grease up all the O-rings. You're gonna wanna put a good amount on the inside of this one. You really can't do too much grease, but you don't wanna have so much grease that you can't pick up your bolt, if that makes sense. So that's pretty solid. We're just gonna put the excess on this little O-ring on the outside. It doesn't really need any, but it doesn't hurt. It just helps it slide into the actual marker body. So for the bolt, we're gonna throw a little bit more grease on these back two. And then for the excess, we're literally just gonna take it and grease up the rest of it, since this is the main thing that's actually pushing on that O-ring. That's good to go. That is all for basic maintenance. Then you can put it back together and you're good to go. It never hurts to check these O-rings too. Now, for more in-depth maintenance, we're going to want to do a couple things. So we're going to take this black piece and we're actually going to twist it off. And sometimes it can be very difficult to get it off, but trust me, you will get it and you won't break it. But you're just going to unscrew this. I'll take it apart and then go through each portion. Be careful because there is a spring and a pin right back here. So we're going to put that right there. We're going to check, make sure there's nothing else inside of there. Pull this piece right out. So we have a couple different pieces here. We have this red piece. This is the bolt guide. That just literally guides this right here. And well, I mean, two things. It guides this into place and it guides the bolt into place. Which, I mean, self-explanatory. But then we have the valve chamber, this black piece. And for even in-depth maintenance, you actually don't have to separate these. You can if you really want to, but you don't have to. Then we have your spool assembly down here. This is this long black piece. You want to be very careful not to mar that. And then we have your spool spring and guide right here. And then we have your switch body, and this little red piece in here is your switch, which we'll actually go ahead and take that out. You can take an Allen key, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put it in here. You'll feel a lip, and you're going to legitimately just force it right out of there. It's very difficult to mar the anodized aluminum, so you won't have to worry too much about that. But this is your switch, and then this is your switch body down here. So here, you're basically going to want to do exactly what I did to the can and the bolt. You're just going to take every single piece and wipe it down. Nothing too crazy. You know, if there's any residue, or sometimes you'll get like this like black color gunk in it, especially over time if you're using like dirty air. You know, you always want to check out for that. You're just going to want to wipe everything down, get it as clean as humanly possible before you continue. So we're going to clean the inside of that. There's a little bit more that I accidentally missed. That looks great. Now on the spool, I'm going to wipe down all the grease. Nothing too crazy here either. And this marker, I mean, is judging by the bolt alone, is in pretty good condition. You know, the body is a little bit dirty, so, you know, it could use a clean, but on the inside, it's looking pretty darn good. So I'm pretty happy with that as well. Now we're going to take our grease and start re-greasing stuff. We'll start with the actual switch right here. So we're just going to want to throw some grease on both O-rings here. You can't really do too much. You just want enough that you can see it. This is probably a little too much, but it's not bad. You're going to want to take your extra grease, though, and put it on the inside of the switch body. Just kind of spin it around there so the switch doesn't get stuck inside of here. So nothing too crazy there. We're going to put the switch right back in. Just like that. That's good to go. Now we are going to do your spool assembly. So we're going to take this, throw some grease on there. Not too much, but just enough. This O-ring right here, you actually don't have to grease. I wouldn't recommend it. Planet Eclipse doesn't recommend it either. This is just sitting legitimately on the inside of the bolt guide. Don't throw grease on that. But the very edge of the spool assembly, you can grease. So just throw some grease on that. That's good to go. Now, your bolt guide and your valve chamber. There's nothing in the valve chamber to actually do. Bolt guide here, there's actually 3 O-rings to check. It's going to be these 2 on the outside. These look great. They will need grease. And then there's one on the inside of this. And you can barely see that. That one on the inside is actually sitting around the spool assembly on the end. That little piece we greased up. So that's what you're going to want to do. You're just going to want to throw some grease right on here. And I'll show you how to grease up the inside of that. You're going to want to take a small Allen key. I recommend the same one you use on the grips, which I think is like the 5/64, if I remember correctly, something like that. You're going to want to take some grease on that. You're just going to want to throw it in there and kind of spin it around just to make sure it is greased up. Probably put a little too much, but it will be fine. Make sure you wipe down your Allen key so you don't throw that into a screw. But that's good to go. So now we're going to reassemble it. We're going to take your valve chamber here and push the spool through. Looking good right there. These two pieces, your spool, spring, and guide, we're going to push inside of there. Keep in mind, this is a spring, so if you push on that and let go, it will shoot and go somewhere in your house or wherever you are. But we're going to very carefully push this through so it doesn't actually get broken or anything. It's on the back. We're going to have to push hard and twist at the same time. So just like that. And then we're going to go all the way. Give it just a little bit, not too tight. You just want aluminum on aluminum here, or metal on metal. And that's good. So we're going to take the other part of the bolt that we already did, push that through, throw it right on, and we are good to go. It doesn't hurt to throw a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of grease on these O-rings. It doesn't really need them, but I do occasionally just to make taking the bolt in and out of the body of the marker a little bit easier. Otherwise, we are good on the bolt. That is it. Now we're going to move on to your ASA and HPR. So this piece, this is how it sits inside the marker. That's how it sits in the marker body, just like this. Okay. So your most important O-ring, at least I consider the most important, is actually this one right here at the very top of your HPR piston. If you have a leak, especially on the bottom side of your grip or bottom portion, typically on the left side, at least in most models, because that's where the bleed hole is, it's going to be this O-ring right here. Not all the time, most of the time, at least what I've seen. So we're going to wipe that off. Just re-grease it if you're having that issue. And if that doesn't fix it, just change this O-ring. And then keep going from there. But we're just going to clean it off, make sure it looks good. The spring, you can wipe off. It doesn't hurt to wipe off, but it doesn't, I mean, it's a spring. It doesn't really do anything. Like, if it's dirty or whatnot, it won't affect it unless this is, like, rusting out or something, which we've only seen on, like, really, really old markers, so you should be fine. But we're going to throw a little bit of grease right back on that. Just like that. If you do have extra, you want to put it on the stem of this HPR piston, and you'll see why here in a little bit. Now, your ASA, this actually does come apart. We're not gonna, you don't have to worry about anything about the ASA lever or anything on the inside of that. You will not really never need to do maintenance on. It's gonna be this piece right here, which is actually your HPR body. We have a couple different things in there. We have a little adjuster, a reg seal that we'll go through, and of course the main body of it. So we'll take that out. You're gonna want to take this. Oh, and what I did there is you can throw an Allen key inside of these holes and uses extra torque. So I'm 90% sure they designed it like that. But yeah, you can do that. Planet does recommend that. So we're gonna take this entire thing out. That's it for this body. So what we're gonna do on the body is, of course, clean it. Make sure there's no grease and grime in there that can mess up our threads. Just wipe the whole thing down. What I do like doing, if you can, is take the edge of a microfiber, push it through without stabbing yourself. I've been there. It's not fun. Trust me. Gonna try to push it through. If you can get it, sometimes I can, sometimes it's a little too hard. If you can get it right in there and then just spin it, if you can get it all the way through, that's the best, just because you'll put more pressure on it, but that's a good way to clean all of your threads out. So we're done with that. Now we have your HPR body and then your HPR adjuster right here. We'll start with the body and then we'll get into the adjuster. So on the body, nothing crazy, wipe it down. You have two O-rings, one on these threads that you don't even have to grease, because it's just protecting it from unscrewing. And then you do have one inside of this little section. You can see it better right down there. There's quite a bit of old grease. It looks like almost sand too inside of there. If you're playing like in Florida, like where this marker came from and where I am from, we do have quite a bit of sand. Somebody probably took a core sample at one point and either a core sample or just dived in the snake and it just got on the assay and threw the rest of the marker. That, or they just dropped their tank in the parking lot and forgot to wipe it down, which wouldn't surprise me. Or they just don't have anything protecting their threads. So to grease that one, we're gonna use the same trick. We're gonna grab an Allen key, grab some grease, that's probably a little too much, and throw it all over there just to make sure it is good, looking good, because that is a sealing portion. That actually seals against your HPR piston, which I'll show you later. Otherwise, this is done. Now, down here, your HPR adjuster, you are gonna wanna take an Allen key here, and I'm gonna see if I can do it by hand. Sometimes I can, sometimes I cannot. Okay, today I cannot, so we're actually gonna try with the needle nose pliers. Just be very careful. So I recommend throwing on some sort of microfiber here before you grab it, just so you don't mar the metal there. But you can also just grab, there we go, I got it. You can also just grab the correct size crescent wrench or whatnot to actually get that going. So again, just be careful because you don't want to mar this metal too much. But this piece will come off. This is your adjuster cap. Comes right off there. There's nothing you need to do there. Just don't lose it. Down here, you have a reg seal. That's this little black portion right here. Under that regulator seal, you have a purge poppet and a tiny, tiny spring. So be careful when you're taking this out. I will show you how, but it might fall out. And if it does, it might roll away and you might never get it back. So be very careful. There is extra ones in your spares. I only say that out of experience. So yeah, just be careful there. So to get this out, you're gonna want some nails, or you might be able to get it with like a screwdriver, but it does take some time because they don't really give you a ton of room to get this open. Let's see, let's try with this. I have a pretty good chance of getting them out, just sometimes I can't. They can be really, really, really tricky, and if I can get enough room, I might be able to just grab it with the needle nose. But this is just a giant seal. It's like a rubber seal, so you don't have to be too worried about destroying it, because the inside is actually what matters. Let's see if we can take this out. Come on. Okay. Going back to nails. That's the tricky thing. You rarely actually have to get into this, but I'll show you here in a second why. So, your reg seal here can sometimes be worn out or just completely destroyed. We'll see it on some older markers where like this middle ring on the inside of that is just absolutely blown out, just destroyed. So we're gonna take that, put that aside. Again, be very, very careful with this part because you do not want to lose this or the orientation of it. Well, I guess you can with the purge valve, but otherwise, yeah. Here you go. This is what you're looking at. Just be very careful because you can lose that part, especially if you're out playing. So the only reason you really need to get into this is to actually mess with your reg seal here. You can, let's just say this side is dead. You know, there's a massive crater out of the middle of it or whatever, something's going wrong. You can actually just flip this over and reuse it. So Planet does recommend that themselves. So we're actually gonna flip this one over and use the other side. There is extra ones in your every single spares bag. And yeah, you're good to go from there. That's all you really needed it to do. So it's a lot of work for something that's minor, but it never hurts right when you get to like 100,000 or 150 to at least flip it over. If not outright replace it at that point. But for the little adjuster down here, you just want to wipe it off, make sure there's nothing gross on it. We're actually going to throw a little bit of grease on this O-ring right here just to help it. It doesn't seal anything, it doesn't really matter, but it never hurts to throw some grease on it. And of course, I took out way too much, so we're gonna wipe that down and put it back together. Again, Be very, very careful with this because this is a spring in tiny parts and I don't want you guys to lose these as much as I do. So we're gonna throw that in, flip this right over, and push it back in. You're gonna want it fairly even. Might take you a few tries. I'm over here struggling with it. There we go. And push it all the way down. Then you're gonna wanna take your adjuster cap and screw that right back on. Sometimes you can hand tighten it and get it to go. Sometimes you might need tools. Just really depends. Like this time, I got it just fine. Sometimes you can take your nose pliers or a wrench and wrench it down because there are tool holes for that. But that is good to go. So now we're going to, actually need that. We're gonna reinstall this back into the body here. Throw that right back in and screw it all the way to the plus. Once you do that, what Planet recommends and what we do is 2.5 times. So 1, 2, and half. There you go. You're gonna throw this piece, the body, right back onto it. Again, taking your Allen key here to get extra torque. You don't want to crazy torque anything down, but just enough there, and you're good. So we're actually going to put the spring back right there in the piston, throw that together and put it aside with our bolt. Finally, we have my favorite part, your solenoid. We're gonna go through the solenoid too. This, you really won't have to do too often. Unless you're having some sort of a solenoid specific issue, you're not gonna have to do this very often whatsoever. We're talking once in every, I think Planet recommends like 75 to 100,000 shots. It could even be more. I would say between 100 and 150,000 shots, or once a year, I'd want to do this just to make sure that your 180R is shooting at peak performance. We're gonna first wipe down any of the excess grease on the outside of that. You have 2 main seals. You do not want to, well, they don't actually go together the opposite way, but just be sure to have these. This is your top seal that seals against your body, because if you don't put these in, you will have a leak in the middle of your gun and you will freak out. Bottom side is the little filter, and actually for this one, you want to check your filter just in case you see like really gross like black stuff. You'll notice when you flip over, like this side should be like the perfect side. This side is slightly used, you can see that a little bit, but overall it looks fine, so it does not need to be replaced. Those come in every single Planet Eclipse spares kit, so you should be fine there. On this, we're just gonna wipe down those 2 seals because sometimes grease will get in there. And we are going to want to take apart the pilot valve right here. That's this main piece. That's your electronic piece. So if you ever have like a broken solenoid, it's typically going to be your pilot valve that you're going to want to replace. So basically, if you have everything put together, you air it up, you can hear air, everything's looking good, and you click it and you're not hearing a click or it's not shooting. If it is the solenoid, I'd recommend bringing it into your store or tech or reaching out to us online. Sometimes it can be this piece. We've only seen, I think, 1 ever malfunction, and it was a super easy replacement because Planet Eclipse does carry a 2-year warranty on all new markers. So you can always check that by checking your serial number on their website. It's really easy to go find. I think it's under like warranty check on their website. Just go to Planet Eclipse. I'll throw the link here, somewhere on this video. But just two screws there. Take this apart. Be very careful. You don't want to crush it or accidentally rip the wires out or anything crazy. Here, this is your solenoid body. You have a spool inside of here, and then you have your solenoid plate right here. So we're going to go ahead and take off the plate. Be very careful from here on out, just because these are tiny screws. You're not supposed to get into here too often, and typically you only want a tech to get into here. So if you are having like major issues, I'd highly recommend taking it to your local field or tech. Planet Eclipse does have a list of all their official dealers on their website, including tech service centers, or you can always reach out to us online at DirtyDanPB.com. So here, you just want to check to make sure there's a little gasket inside of here. there is. That looks good. We're going to set that aside. Now, in here, before I take this out, keep note of what orientation this goes in, because you can't accidentally flip it. I don't know if it actually goes together that way because I've never done that, but just in case, make sure you keep mind of orientation. This is a spool inside of here. You can see it's poking out right there. It's fairly flat on this side. So from here, you can try to use your fingers and get out that way, or you can just use an Allen key, as long as you're careful. Push that through and pull that right out. This one's looking perfect. Keep in mind of the orientation of both of these, so it's easier to put it together without a manual or anything like that. The inside of this looks great. It looks almost brand new. Checking the spool. Looks fine. I don't think I've ever had to replace any of the O-rings on these, but the 180R is still fairly a newer gun. So we're going to wipe those off. Looking good. And then we're going to throw a very, very, very thin line of grease on all of those. Nothing too crazy here. Just enough to make sure they're greased so they don't have any issue. Again, I know I did flip that orientation, so make sure you don't do that. That's just so it's easier to grease these. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. Now we're going to flip it back. Again, flat end with the flat side, a little extruded end on this side. So we're going to push that right through to where it's flat. That feels good. That feels great in there. It's not going to fall out, so we're good, pretty solid there. Now we're going to take our plate and put the plate back on. Actually flipped it the wrong way, looks like. Yep, just like that. There's only one way that this goes on, so it's kind of idiot-proof, I'd say. And take your tiny, tiny little screws here, which I have really fat fingers, so this makes this part very difficult for me. So if you are doing this, just be sure to do it in a very lighted area where if something does fall, it will fall into your tech mat and not roll away into dirt or the floor. Because I can't tell you how many times I have lost parts in my shop or at the field because I'm not paying attention. So screw those back in. And that's all the maintenance you really need to do on this. That's all you can do, in all honesty. That's why they call these solenoids like all rebuildable, because you can go and rebuild your spool and replace specific parts instead of replacing really expensive parts. Like your pilot is going to be the most expensive part in this solenoid, but it's not too bad. Planet should have replacements for these for years to come. I don't expect that to be much of a problem, especially since some of them do share the same pilot model. So we're gonna push this in, hold it like that, grab our tiny screwdriver and throw it back in. Now you don't want to over tighten one side. You want to just kind of bring them both to a good little snug, just like that. And then crank this one a little bit extra, just like that. There you go. There's your solenoid. We're going to throw these gaskets right back on. Make sure you don't lose this filter. That's going to be very, very, very important later on when you're actually using the marker. Now, it is time to put everything back together and go from there. So we'll start with the ASA. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece right here, push it in. Keep in mind the spring, nothing's holding it. So if you do this and then flip it right over, the spring is going to come right out. So throw that on there, throw your ASA on, and these two screws right back in. And same thing with this one, just like the solenoid, you're going to want to screw it till it's somewhat tight, and then you're going to want to go back and tighten both of them after the fact, just so one side isn't more tight than the other. So I always recommend using this side of it. There we go. And then we're going to little tiny crank and little tiny crank. You don't want to go like Superman strong with it because then you might not get it back off. So for the solenoid, you're going to want to hoop that wire just like that, and then it's going to kind of slide right into place. Right where you want it to. That feels good. Take your little brass pin right here, push it right back through. There you go. Make sure that that's not coming back out. And to push this in, you can do this by hand, or you can take an Allen key or a tiny screwdriver and just make sure that it is connected in your board. Just be careful so you don't actually break your board. I have seen that. And yeah, we're gonna throw this right in here. That's good. All those wires look great. I didn't bend those pieces, so that's always good. And yeah, that's that. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the bodies back together. 2 main screws right here. There we go. Almost lost my Allen key. Gonna go ahead and screw those down. Same thing as usual, just go all the way until they're tight. And then come back down to crank them a little bit. But again, not Superman strength. You don't want to go crazy with it. Especially because you can strip these top screws. Yeah, that's that. Now we're going to throw our bolt in that we already teched. Make sure you push up the cap so you're not just digging that into your aluminum. Push it up, in, and back down. That's good to go. That feels great. We're going to throw our front grip on. You can be kind of rough on it. You're not going to break anything, trust me. And then our back grip. Just like that. There are these little tabs, just in case you can't get them in. There's little tabs right here that fit right under there in a little groove. But now, finally, we're going to put these screws right back in. And that is your Planet Eclipse Gtek 180R. That is a full breakdown of the marker, going through all the parts that actually matter. If you have comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments. So reach out to me via the website or Facebook, or shoot us an email on the website or at support@DirtyDanPB.com. I'll throw that somewhere on screen in the description, something like that. I try to keep my little bench here as clean as possible. But yeah, if you have questions or you have a problem and you need help, feel free to reach out to us. Planet Eclipse also has a great tech team, service, warranty, and all that fun stuff. And for them for selling us amazing products like your Allens, your grease, your tech mat, other stuff. And yeah, until next time, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.